My husband slapped my best friend for looking at my chest while I was breastfeeding. The sound of my husband's hand connecting with Sarah's cheek still echoes in my living room 3 hours later. I'm sitting here on my couch, staring at the baby monitor while Emma sleeps upstairs, trying to process what just happened. My best friend of 12 years was slapped across the face by my husband because she glanced in my direction while I was nursing our 6-week-old daughter. It started so normally. Sarah had texted around 2 p.m. asking if she could stop by with the lasagna she'd promised to make for us. She's been incredible since Emma was born, bringing meals, helping with laundry, just being the supportive friend I desperately needed during those early weeks when everything felt overwhelming. Marcus had been working late almost every night since I gave birth, leaving me alone with a crying baby and my own exhausted thoughts. When Sarah arrived at 4:30, I was in the middle of feeding Emma on the couch. I had my nursing cover draped over both of us, the same modest setup I'd used dozens of times when Sarah visited. She knocked softly, I called for her to come in, and she entered carrying this amazing-smelling homemade lasagna and a bag of groceries. Don't mind me, I said, adjusting the cover. Emma decided she was starving right when you texted you were almost here. Sarah laughed and headed to the kitchen. You know I don't care about that stuff. How are you holding up? You look tired. We were chatting about normal things, how Emma's sleep schedule was improving, whether I was ready to start thinking about going back to work in a few months, Sarah's disaster of a Tinder date from the weekend. She was putting groceries away in my kitchen, occasionally glancing over while we talked. Normal friend behavior. Normal conversation. Then Marcus walked through the front door at 5:15. I should mention that Marcus has never liked how close Sarah and I are. In the 2 years we've been married, he's made increasingly pointed comments about how much time we spend together, how she texts me too often, how she's always inserting herself into our business. Since Emma was born, it's gotten worse. He's complained that Sarah acts like she's Emma's aunt, that she's over too much, that I rely on her more than I rely on him. The moment he saw Sarah in our kitchen while I was nursing, his jaw tightened. I recognized that look immediately. It's the same expression he gets when he's building up to one of his lectures about boundaries and priorities. Sarah, he said curtly, not even bothering with a greeting. Hey Marcus, she replied cheerfully, completely unaware of the tension radiating from him. I brought you guys that lasagna and picked up some basics from Target. Diapers, that baby wash you said you were running low on. Marcus walked directly over to where Sarah stood by our kitchen island. Without warning, without a word, he drew his hand back and slapped her across the left side of her face. The sound was sharp and shocking. Sarah stumbled backward, her hand flying to her cheek, eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus! I screamed, clutching Emma closer to me under the nursing cover. She was staring at your chest, he said coldly, as if that explained everything. Staring at my wife while she's feeding our daughter. That's not appropriate, and I won't tolerate it in my house. Sarah looked between us, her cheek already reddening, tears starting to form in her eyes. That's when I realized this had nothing to do with breastfeeding, and everything to do with control. Sarah, I'm so sorry, I started to say, but Marcus cut me off. Don't apologize for me protecting our family's privacy, he snapped, his voice that particular blend of calm and menacing that I'd been hearing more often lately. Sarah knows exactly what she was doing. Sarah's voice was shaky but firm. Marcus, I was not staring at anything. I was talking to my best friend while putting groceries away in your kitchen, groceries I bought for your family, by the way. I saw where your eyes were, Marcus replied, stepping closer to her. Multiple times. That's perverted behavior, and I won't have it around my wife and daughter. The absolute insanity of his accusation hit me like a physical blow. Sarah is the least perverted person I know. She's been nothing but respectful and supportive since Emma was born. Hell, she's probably seen me breastfeed more than Marcus has at this point, considering how often he's been working late. But as I watched Marcus loom over Sarah, something clicked into place. This wasn't about inappropriate staring. This was about the text Sarah sent me last Tuesday. It was around 11 p.m., and I'd been crying on and off all day because Emma had been cluster feeding and Marcus had made some comment about how I needed to figure out why our baby was so fussy, like it was my personal failure as a mother. Sarah had texted, **, you know you can call me anytime, right? Even if it's 2 a.m. and you need someone to talk to or just need me to come sit with you while you cry. That's what friends do. **. Marcus had seen the text when my phone lit up on the nightstand. He'd read it over my shoulder and said, it's interesting how Sarah always seems to think she knows what's best for our family situation. Then there was the conversation from Sunday. Sarah had gently asked how I was adjusting to everything, and I'd been honest, maybe too honest. I'd told her how isolated I felt, how Marcus seemed annoyed whenever I asked for help with Emma, how he'd started making comments about my body and when I'd be back to normal. That doesn't sound normal, Jess, Sarah had said carefully. New dads are supposed to be supportive, not critical. I defended him, of course. Made excuses. But I could tell Sarah was filing away every detail. Sarah, you should leave, I said quietly, still clutching Emma who had started to fuss from all the shouting. Jess, Sarah started. Now, Marcus added, his voice deadly calm. And I think it would be best if you found other ways to spend your time instead of constantly inserting yourself into our family life. Sarah looked at me with this expression of complete heartbreak. Not just from being slapped, but from realizing I wasn't standing up for her. That I was choosing my husband's irrational anger over 12 years of friendship. Fine, she whispered, grabbing her purse from the counter. But Jess, if you need anything. She won't, Marcus interrupted. She has a husband to support her. After Sarah left, Marcus spent 20 minutes explaining to me why what he'd done was justified. How Sarah had been boundary crossing 4 months. How she was trying to undermine his role as my husband and Emma's father. How I needed to start prioritizing my family over friendships that were clearly toxic. But here's what Marcus doesn't know, Sarah isn't just my best friend. She's also a family law paralegal who's seen this pattern dozens of times before. And she's been documenting everything. 3 days have passed since the slap, and Marcus thinks he's won. He's been whistling around the house, making jokes about how peaceful everything feels now, commenting on how much more time I have to focus on what really matters, meaning him and Emma. What he doesn't know is that Sarah called me yesterday at 2:47 p.m. while he was at work. Jess, I need you to listen to me carefully, she said without preamble. I've been thinking about this for months, but Tuesday confirmed everything. What Marcus did isn't normal. It's assault, yes, but it's also part of something bigger. I was pacing our kitchen, Emma napping upstairs, checking the window every few seconds like Marcus might materialize in our driveway. Sarah, I can't really talk about. Just listen. Please. Do you remember Marcus's friend Derek? The one who got divorced last spring? I did remember Derek. Marcus had been furious about the divorce, ranting about how Derek's wife had poisoned their mutual friends against him, how she'd made him look like the bad guy when he was just trying to maintain some structure in their household. Derek's ex-wife came into our firm 6 months ago, Sarah continued. Attorney-client privilege means I can't tell you details, but Jess, the pattern she described. The way Derek isolated her from friends. The way he'd create these explosive incidents whenever she got too close to anyone outside their marriage. The way he'd justify controlling behavior by claiming he was protecting their family. My hands started shaking. That's different. Derek and Marcus aren't. Marcus learned this behavior somewhere, Sarah interrupted. And I think Derek's divorce spooked him. That's why the isolation tactics have ramped up since Emma was born. He's seen what happens when women have support systems that help them recognize abuse. The word abuse hit me like ice water. Marcus doesn't hit me. Physical violence isn't the only kind of abuse, and you know that. But Jess, he hit me. In front of you and your baby. Because I've been your emotional support while he's been working late every night, avoiding the actual work of being a new parent. After we hung up, I spent an hour thinking about Marcus's late nights. How they'd started exactly 1 week after Emma was born. How he'd come home around 8 p.m. every day, just late enough to miss the worst of her fussy periods but early enough to play devoted father for 20 minutes before dinner. Yesterday evening, I decided to test something. When Marcus came home at 8:15 p.m., I told him Emma had been screaming for 2 hours straight and I was at my breaking point. Why didn't you call your mother for advice? He asked, loosening his tie. I did. She didn't answer. Well, what about trying that swaddling technique we read about? I tried everything, Marcus. She's finally asleep now, but I was crying right along with her. I felt so alone. That's when he said it, you know, if you weren't so dependent on other people for emotional support, you'd probably handle these situations better. New mothers are supposed to develop instincts. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. I'd just described 2 hours of crying, both me and our 6-week-old daughter, and his response was to criticize my emotional needs. But here's what gave me clarity, Emma hadn't been crying at all yesterday. She'd napped peacefully from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'd made the whole thing up to see how he'd react to me being in genuine distress. His reaction told me everything I needed to know. This morning, while Marcus was in the shower, I found something interesting in his work bag. A receipt from Murphy's bar dated last Tuesday, the same Tuesday he claimed he was working late on a crucial presentation. The timestamp showed he'd been there from 6:30 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. Murphy's bar is 3 blocks from our house. While I was home alone with a newborn, struggling and texting Sarah about feeling isolated, Marcus was having beers and watching basketball. He's not working late. He's avoiding us. And using work as an excuse to make me feel like I'm failing as a mother when I desperately need help. Sarah was right about the pattern. And now I'm starting to see it everywhere. I spent this morning doing something I never thought I'd do, going through Marcus's things like a detective. While he was at his Saturday morning golf game, another convenient absence that keeps him away during Emma's fussiest hours, I systematically searched our home office. What I found made my stomach drop. Hidden in the back of his filing cabinet, behind our tax documents, was a manila folder labeled personal. Inside were printouts of my text conversations with Sarah going back 4 months. Screenshots of my Instagram posts. Even a printed copy of my Venmo transactions showing payments to Sarah for the groceries and meals she's been bringing us. He's been monitoring my phone. Somehow, someway, Marcus has been reading every private conversation I've had with my best friend since Emma was born. The text screenshots were highlighted in yellow marker. Comments like Sarah asking, "How are you really doing?" and my responses about feeling overwhelmed. Her suggestion that I deserve more support at home. The conversation where I admitted Marcus seemed distant and critical since becoming a father. But the most chilling part was Marcus's handwritten notes in the margins. Next to Sarah's text saying, "You can call me anytime, even 2 a.m., he'd written inappropriate boundaries. Next to her comment about new fathers being supportive, he'd scrawled undermining marriage. He'd been building a case. Documenting what he considered evidence of Sarah's interference in our relationship. The slap wasn't a moment of anger, it was premeditated. He'd been planning to drive her away for months. My hands were shaking as I photographed every page with my phone. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it and called Sarah from our back porch where I could see the driveway. "He's been reading our texts," I said without preamble when she answered. 4 months. He has a whole file. The silence on her end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Jesus Christ, Jess. That's not just controlling behavior anymore. That's stalking. How is he doing it? I have a passcode on my phone. I'm careful about. There are apps, Sarah said grimly. Spyware that can be installed remotely if someone has your Apple ID or access to your phone for even 5 minutes. Marcus is in tech, right? This would be elementary for him. I thought about all the times Marcus had helpfully updated my phone or fixed some minor glitch. How he'd insisted on setting up the family cloud account to make sharing photos easier. How he always knew details about my day that I didn't remember telling him. Sarah, what do I do? First, assume he's listening to this conversation. Don't say anything you wouldn't want him to hear. Second, we need to get you a clean phone, one he's never touched. Can you meet me tomorrow? He'll ask where I'm going. Tell him you're taking Emma to Target. Meet me there at 2 p.m., electronics section. And Jess? Bring that folder. We need photographs of everything. After we hung up, I sat in Emma's nursery for an hour, watching her sleep and thinking about the man I married. 2 years ago, Marcus's attention to detail seemed romantic. He remembered my coffee order, my schedule, my preferences. He wanted to be involved in every aspect of my life. Now I'm realizing the difference between someone who pays attention because they love you, and someone who monitors you because they want control. The worst part is wondering how long this has been going on. Did it start after Emma was born, or have I been living under surveillance for months? Years? At 11:30 a.m., I heard Marcus's car in the driveway. I quickly moved to the living room and arranged myself on the couch with Emma and a book, trying to look casual. How was golf? I asked when he came in, studying his face for any sign he knew I'd been searching the house. Great. Shot an 82. He kissed my forehead, then Emma's. What did my girls do while Daddy was gone? The possessive language made my skin crawl. My girls. Like we were objects he owned. Just relaxed. Emma's been an angel today. Marcus smiled, but something in his eyes looked calculating. Good. I'm glad you're learning to handle things on your own. Shows growth. Learning to handle things on my own. As if needing support was a character flaw he was helping me overcome, rather than a normal human need he was systematically destroying. 24 hours until I meet Sarah. 24 hours of pretending everything is normal while living with a man who's been spying on my most private thoughts. I just hope I can hold it together that long. That night, I barely slept. Every time Marcus shifted in bed next to me, I wondered if he knew what I discovered. At 3:17 a.m., Emma woke up crying, and as I stumbled to her nursery, I caught Marcus watching me from the hallway with an expression I couldn't read in the darkness. Everything okay? He whispered. Just feeding time, I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. You seem tense lately. Maybe you should make an appointment with Dr. Chin. Sometimes new mothers need adjustments to their medication. The way he said it made my blood freeze. Dr. Chen was my psychiatrist. I'd seen her twice during my pregnancy for mild anxiety. Marcus had insisted on driving me to both appointments, waiting in the lobby, asking detailed questions about our conversations afterward. I'm fine, I said quickly. Just tired. Of course you are. I'm just looking out for you. Sunday morning brought a new horror. While Marcus was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand with a text from someone named D_Murphy. Asterisk coffee today? Want to compare notes on your situation versus mine post-divorce? Asterisk. D_Murphy. Derek Murphy. The divorced friend who Marcus claimed had been victimized by his ex-wife's manipulation tactics. I grabbed my phone and quickly photographed the message. As I set Marcus's phone back down, it buzzed again. Asterisk bring the file. Lisa's lawyer is sniffing around our friend group asking questions about patterns. Need to strategize. Asterisk. My hand started trembling so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Derek's ex-wife Lisa was investigating multiple men in their social circle. And Marcus had a file he was planning to share with Derek. The shower was still running. Without thinking, I opened Marcus's text thread with Derek and scrolled up. What I found made me physically nauseous. 3 weeks ago, Derek had texted, asterisk how's Operation Sarah going? Still think the slap was too much, but whatever works. Asterisk. Marcus had replied, asterisk necessary shock therapy. Jessica needs to understand there are consequences when outside influences threaten family stability. Asterisk. Derek, asterisk fair enough. Lisa's friends were the beginning of my problems too. Cut them off early and you'll save yourself years of legal bills. Asterisk. Marcus, asterisk already implementing phase 2. Have her convinced she's too emotionally dependent on others. By the time Emma's 6 months old, Sarah will be a distant memory. Asterisk. Derek, asterisk smart. Document everything that shows the friend was boundary crossing. Judges eat that shit up if things go sideways later. Asterisk. I photographed everything with shaking hands, then heard the shower turn off. By the time Marcus emerged from the bathroom, I was back in bed, pretending to scroll through baby development articles. I'm meeting Derek for coffee at 10, he announced, getting dressed. Might grab lunch after. You'll be okay with Emma? Of course, I said, not trusting myself to say more. Good girl. I love how independent you've become. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I called Sarah from our landline, a phone Marcus couldn't have bugged. Sarah, it's worse than we thought. This is coordinated. Derek and Marcus have been planning this together. I told her everything, the text messages, the Operation Sarah comment, Derek's ex-wife investigating their friend group. Jess, listen to me carefully, Sarah said, her paralegal training kicking in. Change of plans. Don't meet me at Target. Can you get to the Starbucks on 5th Street by noon? And bring Emma, if anyone asks later, you just went for coffee with the baby. Why the change? Because Derek's ex-wife Lisa needs to meet you. Today. She's been building a case about this specific group of men for months. What Marcus just handed you might be the missing piece she needs. After we hung up, I sat in Emma's nursery, rocking her while my mind raced. I thought this was about my marriage, my friendship with Sarah. But we were apparently part of something much bigger, a coordinated effort by multiple men to isolate and control their wives. At 11:45 a.m., I strapped Emma into her car seat and told myself I was just going for coffee. I had no idea I was about to walk into a war room. The Starbucks on 5th Street looked completely normal from the outside, but the moment I walked in with Emma's carrier, I spotted Sarah at a corner table with 2 other women. One was blonde, probably mid-30s, with the kind of tired eyes I recognized from my own mirror. The other was older, maybe 45, wearing a crisp blazer and taking notes in a legal pad. Jess, Sarah stood up as I approached. This is Lisa Murphy, Derek's ex-wife. And this is Rebecca Chen, she's a family attorney. Lisa Murphy looked exactly like someone who'd been through hell and came out stronger. When she shook my hand, her grip was firm and her smile was knowing in a way that made me feel less alone than I had in months. I'm so sorry about what happened to you, Lisa said as I settled Emma's carrier next to the table. Sarah told me about the slap. But honestly, what you discovered this morning is going to help a lot more women than just yourself. Rebecca leaned forward. Before we go any further, I want you to know that anything we discuss is protected. I'm representing 3 women in this group already, and what you've stumbled onto confirms what we've suspected for almost a year. Which is what, exactly? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer would be worse than I imagined. Lisa pulled out her own phone and showed me a screenshot. This is a group text from 8 months ago. Recognize any of these numbers? I looked at the message thread labeled Sunday Golf Crew. There were 6 phone numbers, including one I knew by heart, Marcus's. The messages were from last October, right around the time Derek's divorce was finalized. Derek had written, asterisk learned some hard lessons, boys. Lisa's support system cost me $85,000 in alimony and she got primary custody. Your wife's girlfriends aren't harmless, they're intelligence networks. Asterisk. Marcus had replied, asterisk noted. Jessica's friend Sarah has been asking too many questions about our dynamic since the pregnancy. Might need to create some distance there. Asterisk. Another number I didn't recognize, asterisk same issue with Amy's sister. These women share everything. Need to start managing the information flow. Asterisk. Rebecca was watching my face as I read. Lisa started documenting this after her divorce was final and Derek began retaliating. What began as one woman's custody battle has turned into evidence of a coordinated harassment campaign. There are 6 men in this group, Lisa continued. All married or recently divorced. All using similar tactics to isolate their partners from outside support. Derek taught them what he learned during our marriage, monitor communication, create conflict with friends and family, then document everything to use later if the woman tries to leave. Sarah pulled up something on her laptop. We've been mapping the connections. Marcus and Derek work at the same tech company. 2 other men in the group are from Marcus's gym. They've been sharing surveillance techniques, legal strategies, even coordinating their social media posts to create a narrative about difficult wives and toxic female friendships. My stomach dropped. Marcus posts about me? Lisa nodded grimly. Check his Facebook from 3 days ago. I opened my phone and navigated to Marcus's profile. There it was, a post I hadn't seen because he blocked me from viewing it. Asterisk sometimes protecting your family means making hard choices about who gets access to your home. Grateful for friends who understand that marriage and parenthood require new boundaries. Some people just can't respect that. Asterisk. 43 likes. Comments from his golf buddies praising him for standing firm and putting family first. Derek had commented, asterisk been there, brother. Stay strong. Asterisk. He made me look like the problem, I whispered. His whole social network thinks I'm some kind of controlling wife who can't handle him having boundaries. Rebecca nodded. It's called narrative manipulation. By the time these women realize what's happening, their partners have already convinced everyone around them that they're the unreasonable ones. Emma started fussing in her carrier. As I reached down to check her diaper, Lisa said something that made me freeze. Jess, there's something else. We think Marcus might be documenting more than just your text messages. What do you mean, more than text messages? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as I lifted Emma from her carrier. Rebecca exchanged a look with Lisa before pulling out a tablet. One of our other clients discovered hidden cameras in her home. When we examined the metadata from the recordings, we found they'd been uploaded to a shared cloud account that Derek had access to. The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot, too crowded. You think Marcus is recording me? We think this group has been sharing surveillance techniques, Sarah said carefully. Lisa, show her the timeline. Lisa opened a document on her phone. March 15th, Derek installs monitoring software on his wife's devices. March 22nd, Marcus starts working late every night, right after Emma was born. March 30th, Tom Bradley, another guy in their group, suddenly becomes concerned about his wife's emotional stability and starts suggesting she needs professional help. April 12th, Rebecca continued, Derek's divorce is finalized and he immediately starts coaching the others on documentation strategies. April 18th, your friend Sarah gets slapped, but Marcus had already been building a file on her for weeks. Emma was getting heavier in my arms, but I couldn't bring myself to put her down. How many women are we talking about? 6 wives, 2 girlfriends, Lisa said. All isolated from their support systems within the past 8 months. All with partners who've suddenly become obsessed with boundaries and family priorities. I thought about Marcus's recent suggestions that I see Dr. Chin again, his comments about my emotional dependence, his insistence that I was learning to be independent. Rebecca, I said slowly, when Marcus texted Derek about bringing a file to coffee today, what kind of file do you think he meant? The attorney's expression darkened. Based on what we've seen with other couples, probably photographs, recorded conversations, maybe even medical records if he's gained access to your healthcare information. Medical records? The possibility hadn't even occurred to me. Sarah leaned forward. Jess, remember when Marcus insisted on driving you to Dr. Chen's appointments? Did he ever ask you to sign any forms, maybe saying it was for insurance? My blood went cold. He had me sign a release form. Said it would let him pick up prescriptions if I was too tired after the baby came. That form probably gave him access to your complete psychiatric records, Rebecca said grimly. These men have learned that documenting a woman's mental health struggles is the fastest way to win custody battles. Emma started crying, and as I tried to soothe her, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold her steady. I need to go home. If Marcus gets back from coffee and I'm not there. No, Lisa said firmly. Jess, listen to me. I went home that day. I acted normal, I pretended I didn't know what Derek was planning. You know what happened? He escalated. When these men realize they're losing control, they don't de-escalate, they get more aggressive. But Emma needs her things, and if I don't. We prepared for this, Sarah interrupted, pulling a diaper bag from under the table. Bottles, diapers, clothes for both of you. Rebecca has a safe house arrangement through the firm. Rebecca was already on her phone. I'm calling Judge Martinez for an emergency protection order. With the evidence you photographed this morning, we can get you and Emma legal protection by tonight. This is happening too fast, I said, looking around the coffee shop wildly. I can't just disappear. Marcus will call the police, report Emma kidnapped. He can't report his own wife for kidnapping their child when she's fleeing domestic surveillance, Rebecca said. And Jess, if you go home now, he'll know you found the files. Men like Marcus don't just isolate their wives, they punish them. Lisa reached across the table and touched my arm gently. I know this feels impossible. But Derek seemed like a loving husband too, right up until the moment I filed for divorce. Then I discovered he'd been planning my destruction for months. Emma had stopped crying and was looking up at me with those serious dark eyes that reminded me so much of my own father. My dad, who I hadn't spoken to in weeks because Marcus always found reasons why family visits were stressful for the baby. If I do this, I whispered, there's no going back. There's no going back anyway, Sarah said softly. The only choice is whether you leave on your terms or his. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, asterisk coffee running long. Home by 3. How's my perfect family, asterisk. It was 1:47 p.m. I had 1 hour and 13 minutes to decide whether to save myself and my daughter, or go home and pretend I'd never seen behind the curtain of my marriage. I looked down at Emma, then at the 3 women who'd risked exposing an entire network of abuse to help me understand the truth. What do I need to do? The decision felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold. At 2:15 p.m., I was sitting in Rebecca's car with Emma strapped into a borrowed car seat, following Sarah's Honda toward what Rebecca called a transitional safe house, a furnished apartment the law firm kept for exactly these situations. My phone had been buzzing every few minutes with texts from Marcus. The messages started casual, asterisk picking up groceries. Need anything? Asterisk then slightly concerned, asterisk called the house, no answer. Everything okay? Asterisk. Now, at 2:43 p.m., they were getting sharper, asterisk Jessica, where are you? Your car is gone and you're not answering. Asterisk. Rebecca glanced at my phone screen as we stopped at a red light. Turn it off. Now. But what if there's an emergency? What if? Jess, the emergency is that your husband has been systematically documenting your private life to destroy you. Every minute that phone is on, he knows exactly where you are. With shaking hands, I powered down my phone. The silence felt both terrifying and liberating. The safe house was a second-floor apartment in a converted Victorian about 20 minutes from our neighborhood. Sarah had already brought up supplies, formula, diapers, even a portable crib that she'd somehow acquired in the 2 hours since our coffee meeting. How did you manage all this so quickly? I asked as she helped me settle Emma in the unfamiliar space. Because Lisa and I have been planning for this possibility since Marcus slapped me, Sarah admitted. We hoped we were wrong about how far this went, but Rebecca's other clients, their situations escalated fast once the men realized they were being investigated. Rebecca was setting up her laptop at the small dining table, already on a video call with someone. Judge Martinez can see us at 4:30, she called over. But first, we need to download everything from your phone before Marcus tries to remotely wipe it. The next hour was a blur of legal procedures I'd never imagined needing. Rebecca's tech consultant, a woman named Alex who specialized in domestic surveillance cases, connected my phone to some kind of device that extracted months of data I didn't even know existed. Jesus, Alex muttered, scrolling through screens of information. He's been recording her location every 15 minutes for the past 4 months. Look at this, he knows exactly how long she spent at Target, which aisle she visited, even when she used the bathroom. My stomach lurched. That's not possible. My phone doesn't. There's spyware buried in your system apps, Alex explained. Probably installed when he helped update your phone. He's been getting screenshots of every text, every website you visit, every app you use. And Jess, he's been sharing all of it with the other guys in their group. Rebecca looked up from her legal documents. What do you mean, sharing? Alex turned her laptop screen toward us. There's a shared cloud folder called Sunday Research. 6 men have access. They've been uploading surveillance data on all their partners and comparing notes. The folder contents made me physically ill. There were screenshots of private text conversations from women I'd never met. Photos of purchase receipts. Even medical information, therapy appointment summaries, prescription records, OBGYN visit notes. This isn't just about controlling their wives, Sarah said, her voice tight with anger. They're building a database. Like they're studying us. Lisa arrived at 3:20 with news that made everything worse. Derek never went home after coffee with Marcus. He's been sitting in his car outside your house since 2:30. I think they know you're gone and they're trying to figure out where you went. Through the apartment window, I could see Emma sleeping peacefully in the borrowed crib, completely unaware that her life had just been turned upside down. At 6 weeks old, she was already caught in the middle of a war I hadn't even known was happening. My old phone, now quarantined in Alex's equipment, buzzed with notifications I couldn't see. But Rebecca's expression as she monitored the activity told me everything I needed to know. 27 missed calls in the last hour, she reported. Marcus has also contacted your mother, your sister, and your old college roommate asking if they've heard from you. He's building his narrative, Lisa said grimly. By tonight, everyone in your social circle will think you had some kind of postpartum breakdown and disappeared with the baby. At 4:15 p.m., as we prepared to leave for the courthouse, I realized that Marcus had been right about one thing, there really was no going back now. But what he hadn't counted on was that some doors, once opened, reveal exactly where the real danger was hiding. The courthouse felt like a fortress I was both seeking shelter in and being judged by. Judge Martinez was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd seen everything twice. Rebecca had warned me that emergency protection orders required compelling evidence, but I wasn't prepared for how exposed I'd feel recounting my marriage to a stranger. Mrs. Davidson, Judge Martinez said, reviewing the documents Rebecca had filed, these are serious allegations. Coordinated surveillance, emotional manipulation, assault on a third party. Walk me through what made you realize you were in danger. I clutched Emma closer as I explained about the hidden files, the text messages with Derek, the spyware. But when I got to the part about the shared cloud folder, Judge Martinez held up her hand. Ms. Chen, you're telling me that 6 men have been systematically monitoring their wives and sharing personal information? Rebecca nodded. Your Honor, we have evidence of what appears to be a conspiracy to isolate and control multiple women. The surveillance data shows coordination of their activities. And where are these other women now? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Lisa shifted uncomfortably. 3 are still with their husbands, unaware of the extent of the monitoring. 1 moved out of state last month. Another. She paused, glancing at Rebecca. Another what? Judge Martinez pressed. Another was involuntarily committed to psychiatric care 2 weeks ago, Rebecca said quietly. Her husband presented evidence of erratic behavior and threats to their child's safety to get a 72-hour hold. My blood went cold. What kind of evidence? Text messages taken out of context. Recordings of her crying. A psychiatric history that her husband had documented and interpreted as evidence of instability. Judge Martinez was taking notes rapidly. Ms. Chen, I'm granting the emergency protection order for Mrs. Davidson and her child. But I want the other women contacted immediately. If this is what you're describing, we're looking at a much larger criminal investigation. At 6:47 p.m., as we left the courthouse with a protection order in hand, my old phone registered 43 missed calls from Marcus and 12 voicemails I was legally advised not to listen to. But Alex, monitoring the activity remotely, told us something that made my stomach drop. He's not just calling you, she reported over speakerphone as we sat in Rebecca's car. He's been in contact with your pediatrician's office, your OBGYN, and he tried to access Emma's birth certificate records. Why would he need Emma's birth certificate? I asked. Lisa's expression was grim. He's preparing to report you for kidnapping. Or to file for emergency custody. Derek did the same thing when I left, claimed I was mentally unstable and had taken our daughter without permission. Rebecca was already dialing. I'm calling my colleague who handles family court. We need to file our own custody motion first thing tomorrow morning. As we drove back to the safe house, Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and went pale. It's my landlord. Marcus shouldn't even know where I live. She answered cautiously. Hello? Even from the passenger seat, I could hear the agitated voice on the other end. Sarah's face grew increasingly troubled as she listened. I understand. Yes, I'll take care of it immediately. She hung up and turned to us. Marcus called my landlord 20 minutes ago. Told him I've been dealing drugs out of my apartment and that he has video evidence. My landlord wants me out by tomorrow night or he's calling the police. The systematic nature of Marcus's retaliation was breathtaking. In less than 4 hours, he'd not only tried to track me down through our entire social network, but he'd also begun destroying Sarah's life as punishment for helping me. This is escalating faster than we anticipated, Rebecca said, pulling into the safe house parking lot. We need to contact the other wives tonight. If Marcus is willing to make false accusations about drug dealing, there's no telling what he and his friends might do to the women who are still at home. As I carried Emma upstairs to the apartment that was our temporary sanctuary, I realized that exposing Marcus hadn't freed me from his control. It had declared war on an entire network I was only beginning to understand. And somewhere across town, 5 other women were still living with men who had been taking notes on how to destroy them. That evening, while Emma slept in the borrowed crib, Rebecca received a call that changed everything. She stepped onto the apartment's small balcony to take it, but we could hear her voice growing increasingly sharp through the sliding door. What do you mean, they filed first, she said. That's impossible. We just left the courthouse. Lisa and Sarah exchanged worried glances. I was pacing the living room, still trying to process how quickly my entire life had imploded, when Rebecca came back inside with an expression I'd learned to dread. Marcus filed for emergency custody at 4:15 p.m., she announced. 15 minutes before our hearing even started. My knees nearly buckled. How is that possible? He went to a different courthouse. Filed in the county where his office is located, claiming you'd been exhibiting erratic behavior and had abducted Emma during a mental health crisis. Rebecca sat heavily at the dining table. He presented evidence of your postpartum anxiety treatment and text messages where you allegedly expressed feeling overwhelmed by motherhood. Those were private conversations with Sarah about normal new mother struggles. Taken out of context, they read like admissions of incompetence, Rebecca said grimly. He also submitted a statement from Dr. Chen's office confirming you'd been prescribed anxiety medication during pregnancy. Sarah's face flushed with anger. He manipulated her into signing that medical release form. This is exactly what he planned. But Rebecca held up her hand. There's more. Marcus also presented testimony from a witness who claims Sarah has been interfering with your family and encouraging you to abandon your responsibilities as a mother. What witness? I demanded. Rebecca consulted her notes. Derek Murphy. He signed an affidavit stating he personally observed Sarah engaging in boundary-crossing behavior and attempting to alienate you from your husband. The coordinated nature of their attack was staggering. While I'd been discovering Marcus's surveillance, he and Derek had been 3 steps ahead, already building their legal strategy. The emergency hearing is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m., Rebecca continued. The good news is that Judge Martinez's protection order gives us standing to challenge his filing. The bad news is that Marcus has been planning this for weeks, and we have less than 12 hours to prepare. Alex called at 8:23 p.m. with an update that made my blood freeze. I've been monitoring the shared cloud folder, she reported. Derek just uploaded something called Phase 3 documentation. It's a 47-page file with surveillance data on all 6 women. What kind of data? Lisa asked. Everything. Shopping patterns that supposedly prove fiscal irresponsibility. Text messages showing emotional instability. Even photographs. It looks like some of these guys have been taking pictures of their wives without consent and sharing them with the group. Rebecca was taking frantic notes. Alex, we need that file. If we can prove Marcus was part of a conspiracy to gather evidence against multiple women. Already on it. But Rebecca, there's something else. The file includes what they're calling contingency plans. If one woman tries to leave, they have strategies for discrediting her entire support network. Sarah went pale. That's why he's going after my apartment. It's not just retaliation, it's part of their plan. At 9:15 p.m., my sister Karen called Rebecca's phone. I'd listed Rebecca as my emergency contact during the courthouse visit, and apparently Karen had gotten the number from the hospital when she tried to reach me. Jess, thank God, she said when Rebecca put the call on speaker. Marcus called me 2 hours ago saying you'd had some kind of breakdown and disappeared with Emma. He sounded so worried, but something felt wrong about his story. Karen, I'm safe. Emma's safe. But Marcus has been. I know, she interrupted. After he hung up, I called Mom. Turns out he contacted her too, with the exact same story. Word for word. Like he'd rehearsed it. Rebecca leaned forward. Karen, this is Rebecca Chan, I'm Jess's attorney. Did Marcus ask you to do anything specific? He wanted me to call Jess's friends and family to help coordinate a search. He even offered to send me a list of phone numbers. But here's the thing, he already knew I'd been worried about Jess for weeks. My chest tightened. Worried about what? You stopped calling, stopped texting. When I'd reach out, you'd respond, but it felt different. Distant. I thought it was just new mother exhaustion, but Marcus seemed to know exactly what I was going to say about your behavior. The room went silent as the implication hit us. Marcus hadn't just been monitoring my communications, he'd been using the information to manipulate my family's perceptions of me for weeks. At 10:47 p.m., as we prepared for what might be the most important legal battle of my life, Rebecca's phone rang one final time. "It's Judge Martinez," she said, looking puzzled. "Judges don't usually call attorneys at home." She answered, listened for several minutes, then hung up with an expression I couldn't read. "Well?" Lisa demanded. Rebecca looked directly at me. "Judge Martinez just received an interesting phone call. Apparently, Marcus contacted her office 20 minutes ago, claiming I'd helped you kidnap Emma and demanding that she reverse the protection order." "Can he do that?" "No. But Jess, he made one critical mistake." Rebecca's smile was sharp. "He referenced specific details from your private medical records that he should have no legal access to. Details that weren't in any of the court filings." Sarah caught on first. "He just admitted to accessing confidential information illegally." "Tomorrow morning isn't just about custody anymore," Rebecca said, gathering her files. "We're going to end this entire network." At 11:23 p.m., I was finally getting Emma settled in the unfamiliar crib when Alex called with news that made my hands shake so violently I nearly dropped the phone. "Jess, you need to hear this. I've been monitoring Marcus's location through the spyware connection, and he's not at home." Rebecca, who had been reviewing legal documents at the kitchen table, looked up sharply. "Where is he?" "He's been parked outside Sarah's apartment building for the past 47 minutes. But that's not the worst part." Alex's voice was tight with urgency. "I just intercepted a group message between him and Derek. They're planning something for tonight." Sarah went pale. "What kind of something?" Derek texted, "Landlord won't move fast enough. Need to accelerate timeline before tomorrow's hearing." Marcus replied, "Agreed. Have what we need for documentation. Meet at 11:45. I sank into a chair, Emma soft breathing, the only calm thing in a world that felt like it was spinning apart. They're going to plant something in Sarah's apartment. The drug accusation wasn't random, they're going to make it real. Rebecca was already on her phone, dialing 911. "This is Rebecca Chen, attorney for Davidson versus Davidson case. I need to report a crime in progress." She rattled off Sarah's address and explained the situation in rapid legal terminology that I barely followed. But Sarah was shaking her head. "The police won't get there in time. And even if they do, Marcus and Derek will just say they were concerned about my erratic behavior and came to check on me. Without proof of what they're planning to plant." Lisa stood up abruptly. "I have proof. Derek tried this exact same thing with my sister when she started helping me during the divorce. The difference is, I was too scared to stop him then." She pulled out her phone and showed us a recording app. "I've been documenting everything Derek does for the past 6 months. If Marcus and Derek are following their usual pattern, Derek is recording their conversation right now to use as evidence later, proof that they were worried about a drug situation. So what do we do?" I asked, bouncing Emma gently as she started to fuss, responding to the tension in the room. Alex's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "I have an idea, but it's risky. I can access Marcus's phone remotely through the same spyware network he used on you. If he's recording their conversation as evidence, I can copy that recording in real time." Rebecca looked up from her frantic note-taking. "That might not be admissible in court if it's obtained through illegal surveillance. But it would prove conspiracy," Lisa said. "And if we can get the recording before they plant whatever they're planning to plant." At 11:38 p.m., my phone, the new clean phone Rebecca had given me, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. *Jess, this is Karen. Marcus just called me again. He's asking really specific questions about Sarah, where she works, what kind of car she drives, whether I think she's been acting strange lately. Something is very wrong here. *. Sarah grabbed the phone and typed back, *Karen, do not give Marcus any information about anyone. He's not who you think he is. *. The reply came immediately, *I figured. I told him I hadn't heard from you in weeks and didn't know any of your friends. But Jess, he had photos on his phone. Pictures of you and Emma that I've never seen before. Pictures that looked like they were taken without you knowing. *. My stomach dropped. He's been photographing us. Secretly. This whole time. Rebecca's expression was grim as she hung up with 911. Police are dispatched to Sarah's building, but they can't enter without probable cause unless they witness a crime in progress. At exactly 11:44 p.m., Alex's voice came through the speaker with deadly clarity. "I'm in. Marcus's phone is recording. I can hear everything." Through the static and electronic interference, Derek's voice emerged. "Building manager gave me the spare key for a wellness check. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the cops show up. Your wife's lawyer is smarter than we thought." Marcus's reply made my blood freeze. "Doesn't matter. By tomorrow morning, Sarah will be arrested and Jess will look like she's been taking advice from a drug dealer. Jessica always was too trusting, she'll never see this coming." The sound quality was terrible through Alex's remote connection, but Marcus's voice came through clearly enough to make my hands shake. "Packages in place. Took photos of the discovery for evidence." Derek's response was muffled, but I caught the words anonymous tip and search warrant. Rebecca was writing frantically while talking to someone on her other phone. "Yes, Detective Morrison, we have audio evidence of a crime in progress. 2 men planting evidence in an apartment to frame an innocent woman." At 11:52 p.m., Alex's voice cut through the chaos. "They're leaving. Marcus just texted someone, number I don't recognize, saying Sarah Williams, 847, Pine Street, apartment 2B. Anonymous concerned citizen report. Suspicious activity and strong chemical odors." Sarah went completely white. "Chemical odors? What did they plant?" Lisa was pacing now, her own phone pressed to her ear. "Derek used the same setup with my sister. They plant materials for making methamphetamine, then call in a tip about suspicious smells. Even if the person is never charged, the arrest record destroys their credibility." Emma started crying, picking up on the tension in the room. As I tried to soothe her, Rebecca hung up and turned to us with an expression I couldn't read. "Detective Morrison says they have units responding, but Marcus and Derek were gone before police arrived. They found Sarah's apartment door unlocked and evidence of forced entry." "Did they find what was planted?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Yes. A small bag of what appeared to be methamphetamine precursors hidden in your bedroom closet. Exactly where an anonymous tip said police would find drug manufacturing materials. The room fell silent except for Emma's soft whimpering. The precision of Marcus's plan was terrifying. By tomorrow morning, Sarah would have been arrested on drug charges, destroying her credibility as a witness and eliminating her as my support system in one coordinated strike. Alex's voice crackled back through the speaker. There's more. I'm still connected to Marcus's phone. He's texting Derek, phase 3 complete. Jessica will have no credible witnesses by morning. Custody hearing should go smoothly. Derek's response appeared on Alex's screen. Good work. Tom's wife bought the Sarah's arrest story completely. Says she always knew something was off about Jess's friend. Narrative is spreading. I felt physically sick. Tom's wife? How many people are involved in this? Rebecca looked up from her legal documents. The 6 men in their group are married to 6 women. If those wives believe Marcus's version of events, your entire social circle will think you've been getting advice from a drug dealer. But Lisa was smiling grimly at her phone. Except Derek made one mistake. He sent that same text to me by accident, muscle memory from when we were married. I have screenshot proof that he was coordinating with Marcus to frame Sarah. At 12:07 a.m., Detective Morrison called Rebecca back. Ms. Chen, we need to talk. The planted evidence in Ms. Williams' apartment? It has fingerprints on it. But not hers. Rebecca put the call on speaker. Whose fingerprints, detective? Derek Murphy's. And we found something else, a receipt in the bag from a hardware store, purchased yesterday at 3:47 p.m. Store security cameras show Murphy and another man making the purchase together. Sarah grabbed my arm. They have video evidence of Marcus and Derek buying the materials they planted. The detective continued, Ms. Chen, based on what we've uncovered tonight, we're looking at conspiracy charges, breaking and entering, planting evidence, and potentially a much larger pattern of harassment. How many other women did you say were involved? Rebecca glanced at our small group. Detective, I think you're going to need a bigger investigation team. At 12:23 a.m., as Emma finally settled back to sleep, my old phone buzzed with a message that Alex intercepted. Marcus texting his golf group chat, package delivered. Sarah problem solved. Jess will be home by tomorrow night. But what Marcus didn't know was that his solved problem had just become evidence of a criminal conspiracy. And the custody hearing that was supposed to destroy me had just become the platform where we'd destroy them. At 12:47 a.m., Rebecca's phone rang with a call that made everything infinitely worse. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. It's Detective Morrison again. That's not good. She answered, putting it immediately on speaker. Detective, what's wrong? Ms. Chen, we have a problem. Derek Murphy just walked into our precinct with his attorney, claiming he has evidence that your client Jessica Davidson is mentally unstable and poses a danger to her infant. My blood went cold. What kind of evidence? Apparently he recorded a conversation earlier tonight where Marcus Davidson expressed concern about his wife's erratic behavior and her association with dangerous individuals. Murphy is claiming the planted evidence in Williams' apartment actually belongs to your client. Sarah shot to her feet. That's impossible. We have the security footage of them buying those materials. I know that, and you know that, Detective Morrison said grimly. But Murphy's attorney is very good, and they're spinning a narrative that Davidson was trying to protect his child from a mother who's been influenced by drug users. Rebecca was scribbling notes frantically. Detective, please tell me you haven't released the planted evidence to them. We haven't. But here's what I'm worried about. Murphy knew details about the evidence that weren't in any police report. He described exactly what we'd find in Williams' apartment before we told him what we discovered. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Because he put it there. He's describing his own crime. Alex's voice crackled through my phone speaker. I'm still monitoring Marcus's device. He's getting a call right now from someone labeled Attorney B. Hold on. Through the electronic interference, we could hear fragments of Marcus's conversation. Successful placement. Custody hearing at 9 a.m. Wife's mental state. Documented evidence of poor judgment. Lisa grabbed my arm. Derek did this exact same thing to me. When the evidence planting didn't work fast enough, he flipped the narrative. Claimed I was the one with the drug problem and he was the concerned husband trying to protect our daughter. Emma stirred in her crib, and I moved to check on her, my hands shaking. At 6 weeks old, she was completely innocent in all this, but already being used as a weapon in a war I hadn't even known we were fighting. Detective Morrison's voice cut through my thoughts. Ms. Chen, there's something else. We ran Derek Murphy's name through our system. He's been arrested twice in the past year, once for harassment of his ex-wife, once for violating a restraining order. But both charges were dropped. Dropped how? Rebecca demanded. Insufficient evidence. The complainant, his ex-wife, suddenly became uncooperative with prosecution both times. Lisa's face went ashen. He threatened me. Said if I pressed charges, he'd make sure I lost custody of our daughter permanently. I dropped the complaints because I was scared. At 1:03 a.m., Alex's monitoring picked up something that made my stomach drop. Marcus calling someone new. A woman's voice answered, Dr. Chen's answering service. This is Marcus Davidson, we heard him say. I need to speak with Dr. Chen about my wife Jessica's medication. It's an emergency, she's had an episode tonight and I'm concerned about her ability to care for our newborn safely. Rebecca was already dialing. That son of a bitch is trying to get your psychiatrist to create documentation of a mental health emergency that didn't happen. Can he do that? I whispered. Not legally. But if he's convincing enough, Dr. Chen might document a concerning call from spouse in your file. That becomes evidence tomorrow morning. Sarah was pacing frantically. How are they always 3 steps ahead of us? Every time we think we've caught them, they have another plan. The answer came from Alex, her voice tight with urgency, because they've done this before. I've been digging through the cloud files. This exact sequence happened with 2 other women in their group. Plant evidence, flip the narrative, get medical documentation, win custody. It's a playbook. Rebecca looked up from her legal documents, her expression grim. Which means we know what comes next. And for the first time tonight, that gives us an advantage. At 1:17 a.m., with less than 8 hours until the custody hearing that would determine Emma's future, we finally had what we needed to fight back. But Marcus had one more move planned that none of us saw coming. At 1:34 a.m., my sister Karen called Rebecca's emergency line with news that made my hands start trembling again. "Jess, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice shaky. "Marcus just left my house. He showed up 20 minutes ago saying you'd called him crying about wanting to hurt yourself, and that he was desperately trying to find you before you did something to Emma." Rebecca put the call on speaker, her face grave. "Karen, please tell me you didn't tell him anything." "I didn't, but that's not the problem. He had a recording, Rebecca. Audio of Jess sobbing and saying things like 'I can't do this anymore and maybe Emma would be better off without me.' He played it for me and my husband." The room went silent except for Emma's soft breathing. "I felt like I was going to be sick. Karen, I never said those things. I never called Marcus tonight at all." "I know that now," she said quickly. "Because after he left, I remembered something. 3 weeks ago, you called me when you were having a really hard day with Emma's sleep schedule. You were crying, exhausted, saying normal new mom stuff about feeling overwhelmed." Alex's voice cut through the speaker from her monitoring station. He recorded that call. Probably all her calls. Then edited clips together to create a fake conversation. Rebecca was writing furiously. "Karen, did Marcus ask you to do anything specific? He wanted me to sign a statement saying I was concerned about your mental state. Had the paperwork already prepared. When I refused, he said he understood this was difficult for family but that Dr. Chen had recommended getting statements from people who'd witnessed your struggles." My blood went cold. "Dr. Chen recommended that?" "That's what he claimed. Said she was very concerned after his call tonight and wanted family input for your emergency psychiatric evaluation." Detective Morrison's voice crackled through Rebecca's other phone. "Miss Chen, we've got a problem. Dr. Chen's office just called our precinct. Someone claiming to be Jessica Davidson called them at 12:47 a.m. threatening suicide and saying she might harm her baby." "That's impossible," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I've been here the entire time." Alex was typing rapidly on her laptop. The call came from a spoof number that showed up as Jessica's phone. "But I can trace the actual origin. Marcus made that call using voice-changing software." Rebecca stood up, gathering her files. "He's creating a paper trail. The edited recording for family witnesses, the fake suicide call for medical documentation, the planted evidence for criminal credibility issues. By 9 a.m., he'll walk into that courtroom with evidence that I'm unstable, criminal, and suicidal." Sarah grabbed my arm. "Jess, what exactly did you say during that call to Karen 3 weeks ago?" I tried to remember through my exhaustion and panic. I was crying because Emma had been awake for 6 hours straight. I said something like, "I don't know how to do this and maybe I feel like I'm failing at everything. Normal new mom breakdown stuff." "He turned your normal struggle into evidence of mental illness," Lisa said grimly. "Derek did the exact same thing to me. Recorded me during my worst moments as a new mother, then played edited versions for his lawyer." At 1:52 a.m., Alex's monitoring picked up Marcus making another call. "This is Marcus Davidson calling back about my wife Jessica's emergency psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Chen asked me to provide specific incidents of concerning behavior." Rebecca grabbed her phone. "I'm calling Dr. Chen's emergency line right now. We need to stop this before he creates more false documentation." But when she dialed, the answering service had troubling news. "Dr. Chen received 3 emergency calls tonight regarding Jessica Davidson. The doctor is currently reviewing whether an involuntary psychiatric hold is warranted." Emma woke up crying, and as I lifted her from the crib, I realized that in less than 7 hours, Marcus would walk into a courtroom with fabricated evidence that I was an unstable mother who associated with drug dealers and made suicide threats. And until tonight, his plan would have worked perfectly. At 6:23 a.m., 3 hours before the custody hearing that would determine Emma's future, Rebecca burst through the safe house door with news that changed everything. "Judge Martinez moved our hearing up to 7:30 a.m., she announced, setting down coffee and looking more determined than I'd seen her all night. "She reviewed the evidence we submitted at 5 a.m. and wants to see both parties immediately." Alex looked up from her laptop where she'd been working all night. "The audio files are clean and authenticated. We have Marcus and Derek's voices clearly planning the evidence planting, plus the hardware store footage showing them purchasing the materials." Sarah was feeding Emma a bottle while I tried to make myself look presentable for court. "What about the fake psychiatric emergency calls?" "Dr. Chen called me back 20 minutes ago," Rebecca said, consulting her notes. When she realized the timeline didn't match, Marcus claiming Jessica called threatening suicide while Jessica was documented as being in police protective custody, she figured out the calls were fraudulent. At 7:15 a.m., we arrived at the courthouse where Marcus was already waiting with his attorney, a sharp-dressed man who looked supremely competent. Marcus barely glanced at me, but I caught his expression when he saw Detective Morrison entering the building behind us. "Why are the police here?" Marcus's attorney asked Rebecca immediately. "Because your client is about to be arrested for conspiracy, fraud, and evidence tampering," she replied calmly. "Judge Martinez called us into chambers at exactly 7:30 a.m. Emma was sleeping peacefully in her carrier, blissfully unaware that her entire future was being decided in this wood-paneled room. "Mr. Davidson," Judge Martinez began, "before we address custody, I need to discuss some concerning evidence that's come to light regarding your conduct." Marcus's attorney started to object, but the judge held up her hand. "Mr. Davidson, did you coordinate with Derek Murphy to plant illegal substances in Sarah Williams' apartment last night?" I watched Marcus's face carefully. For just a moment, his mask slipped and I saw genuine panic. "Your Honor, I have no idea what." Judge Martinez pressed a button and Alex's cleaned-up audio recording filled the room, Marcus's voice clearly saying, "Package is in place." Took photos of the discovery for evidence. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Marcus's attorney was frantically whispering in his ear, but Marcus just stared at the table. Additionally, Judge Martinez continued, "Dr. Chen has provided documentation that you impersonated your wife to create false psychiatric emergency records. The phone company confirms the calls originated from your device using voice modification technology." Marcus finally looked up, and his eyes met mine across the room. The man I'd married, the father of my daughter, looked at me with pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've done, Jessica. No idea what you're destroying." "What I'm destroying?" I found my voice for the first time since entering the courtroom. "Marcus, you tried to have my best friend arrested on false drug charges. You've been spying on me for months. You coordinated with 5 other men to systematically destroy their wives' support systems. Judge Martinez was reviewing additional documents. Mr. Davidson, I'm granting Mrs. Davidson full temporary custody of the minor child. You'll be permitted supervised visitation pending the resolution of criminal charges. At 8:47 a.m., Detective Morrison arrested Marcus in the courthouse parking lot. As they led him away in handcuffs, he turned back to me one final time. This isn't over, he called out. You think you've won something, but you have no idea how to take care of yourself without someone managing your life. Sarah stepped up beside me, adjusting Emma's blanket against the cool morning air. Actually, Marcus, she's been taking care of herself just fine. You were never managing her life, you were controlling it. As we watched the police car drive away, Rebecca put her hand on my shoulder. Detective Morrison says they're executing search warrants on all 6 men today. The other wives are being contacted this morning. Emma stirred in her carrier and opened those serious dark eyes, looking up at me with complete trust. For the first time in months, I felt like I could protect that trust. At 9:15 a.m., exactly when Marcus's original custody hearing was supposed to begin, I was instead sitting in a coffee shop with my daughter, my best friend, and my freedom. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Karen, saw the news about Marcus's arrest. Emma and I are coming to help however we can. Love you. The nightmare was over. The real work of rebuilding our lives was just beginning.